Alright, so before we even open up Cinema 4D, I want to show you guys how to prepare these stickers, because it's really important that we have a diffuse, which is going to be this colorful version of our sticker, and an alpha and opacity channel as well. Alright, so go ahead and open up your Photoshop. Let's go back to our resources folder and just drag and drop Jake into Photoshop. Alright, so you'll notice immediately with this particular file that there's a checkered pattern in the background, and that means that this is a .png file and it has a transparent background. So this is usually going to be the most ideal form of sticker or label that you want to prepare whenever you work in with creating labels and stickers. So that transparent background means that if I go to the shape layer over here and just drag and drop, or just drag out a shape layer and just drag it underneath Jake, you can see because he's isolated, the black background is now behind Jake. But let's say you downloaded your own sticker and for whatever reason we don't have this transparent background. So I'm just going to go ahead and flatten this image and double click over here to unlock the background layer. Let's say you've downloaded a label like this and the background isn't transparent, but it's obviously depending on how that label has been made. You can just use the magic wand and just select the white region like this and then press delete, and it's going to isolate that label for you, and you will have your diffuse version of the label prepared and ready to save out. So I would actually go ahead, file, and save this out as a PNG if I was doing my own label. So let's prepare the alpha or the opacity version. So just go back to the shape layer, drag out another shape, make sure that the color over here is completely black. Right, I'm going to go back to layers, put that underneath Jake, select Jake, go to layer, layer style, color overlay, and you want to make sure that this is completely white. Right, so what I'm basically doing over here is I'm preparing a 3D material, and in the 3D program, whatever is going to be white is going to be included on our sticker, and whatever is going to be black is going to be excluded. Right, so if you were doing your own label, go ahead and save this out. But again, I definitely had to cover this process for anyone who's doing this with their own labels. But if you're using the resources, like I said, everything is already prepared for you over here. And this version of the alpha, I'm going to be explaining a little bit later. And it's a really cool way of adding some weathering and some decay to the labels as well. Okay, so everything's good to go. It's time to head over to Cinema 4D. Okay, so I'm going to be demonstrating these techniques on a very basic primitive throughout the tutorial, but once you understand the techniques, you'll be able to apply this onto any piece of 3D geometry. So I want to keep things simple and just use a basic primitive. So I'm going to be using a cube. Now I'm going to go to Create, Shader, Cinema 4D Octane material. Now this is really important. This first material we're creating is going to be called the base layer. Now the base layer should represent whatever your material is supposed to look like. So whether you want your material to look like concrete or wood and you've downloaded those images, that is what the base layer is going to be. So let's drag and drop that onto our cube. Let's double click on here. Let's change our material type to glossy. I'm going to go to diffuse. I'm going to load in an image texture. Go into the image texture, click on those three dots, and let's load in this image over here that I found for free online, which is a concrete material. Over here I'll click on no, and let's just add a little bit of roughness so that we don't have such a strong specular highlight over there, and so that our material doesn't look very glossy. Right, so we're good to go. We've got our base material or our base layer on our cube. And just to visualize this a little bit better, let's go to our plugin, Cinema 4D Octane, and open up the live viewer and just send this cube over to the live viewer. And let's go to Objects, Lights, and bring in an Octane area light into our scene, just so we have some light being cast onto our cube as well. And I'm just moving this up over here. And I'm going to go to the light and just decrease some of the brightness. Okay. Right, so let's create that sticker material. Go to Create, Shader, Cinema 4D Octane material. Double click on that. Let's change the material type to glossy. And let's open up the node editor. So we're going to need two image textures. So just drag and drop an image texture like this. Connect this one to the opacity and this one to the diffuse. And we're going to need a transform as well. Connect this transform to the diffuse transform and to the opacity transform. So this single node that you see over here is going to allow us to adjust the values on both the diffuse and the opacity at the exact same time. So it saves us a couple clicks. We don't have to go to the diffuse, change some values, and then make sure those values are exactly the same in the opacity. This single node is going to control both of those values at the exact same time. Now select the first image texture, which is the diffuse. Let's go to these three dots and let's load in the sticker of Jake. So the colorful version. Over here, I'll click on no, and let's go to the opacity, click on those three dots, and let's load in the Jake alpha. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to actually drag and drop this material onto our cube, and you're going to notice that our background, like I explained with the Photoshop section, anything that's black over here has been excluded, and anything that's white is our sticker. So there we go. We've already got Jake on our cube. Now he's on every single face, and I'll be showing you how to selectively place a sticker onto an individual face as well. But for now, we've got Jake on our material. So we've got our base material that's been placed down first, and then our sticker on top. So what's really important is to pay close attention to the layer order over here, because if I put our base material in front of the sticker, our sticker is going to be hidden. So this is a great way to control the layering of your stickers or labels on top of your base material. Right, so everything's good to go, but I want to show you a little error or a problem that you might run into and how to troubleshoot that regarding the sticker. So if I go back to my transform and let's say I want to decrease the size of Jake. So I'll just bring down the scale value, but you'll notice that Jake has basically been duplicated all over this cube, and that's exactly what we don't want to happen. So to fix this is super simple. Just go to your opacity, by border mode, put that on black color. So the program is only going to reference the black area on the opacity, and it's going to isolate Jake, and there we go. Now you don't really need to do the exact same thing on the diffuse because it's only referencing the opacity. Okay, so we've got Jake isolated on our cube, and now all we need to do is, if I go and select my material over here, you'll see at the bottom we've got these offset values. So this is a very easy way to move Jake around on our material. So you can do it over here with the offset, which I find is a lot quicker and easier to move the material around, or under transform, you can also do it over here by tiling. But you can see there's a little bit of a delay on how quick it updates, so I usually just use the offset. Okay, and you can also use rotate Z if you want to rotate your sticker. And then obviously we have the scale slider. As I mentioned, we can see Jake is basically on every single face on this cube. So how do we do a selective placement of our sticker? This is very simple. Select the cube, and this applies to any object that has multiple faces. Just select the cube, press C. Now I'm going to actually show you two ways to do the selective placement. Right now, if I go to select faces, all I have to do is select all of the faces where I don't want Jake to be. So I'm just holding down Shift and left clicking over here. And I'm going to drag and drop my base material onto that region. And there we go. Jake is officially no longer on those faces. All right. But a better way of doing this so that Jake is not applied onto every single face, from the beginning, what I would do is, right, I'm going to go to my layer order over here. I'm going to delete this and this selection tag, and I'm going to delete my sticker as well. Before you even apply your sticker, select the face where you want your sticker to be visible. So I just want my sticker on this face. So I'll select that and just drag and drop, and there we go. Now Jake is just on this face and it's created a selection tag just for this individual face. Because obviously if you've got a really complicated piece of geometry, going ahead and individually selecting all of those faces where you don't want Jake to be, it might take a little bit of time. So make sure you do it right from the beginning. Okay, so you understand the basics, but let's say we want to add another sticker onto the exact same face. So let's duplicate Jake. Now we've got another material. It's super simple. Select that face, drag and drop Jake onto the exact same face. Now let's go into this material. Remember, pay very close attention to the layer order over here. So you can see here's our new Jake that we just dragged down. Now I can offset this, right? And there's Jake in our scene. So now we've got two Jakes, and we can place Jake wherever we want him to be. So that's how you apply multiple stickers onto the exact same surface. Okay, so we've got a perfect stick on the surface, but what if we want to add a little bit of realism or add some variation to these stickers as well and add some weathering? That's where this particular map comes in handy. Okay, so let's just go back to Photoshop, drag and drop your perfect alpha into Photoshop. Let's double click on the background, click on OK, and let's create a shape layer that's going to be underneath this one. It must be completely black. Drag it underneath, and on our alpha layer over here, let's create an adjustment, a layer mask. So this is going to allow you to paint on any weathering or damage non-destructively. We want to make sure we're painting with black, and then I'm going to go to my brush over here, and I'm just using the basic brushes that come with Photoshop. If you've got brushes with more texture on them, then you're going to be doing a much better job than me, but I'm just showing you the overall technique. So I'm using a brush called Sample Brush 415. And then from here, make sure the layer mask is selected. You can go ahead and paint some weathering. So you can see this particular brush has some really nice texture on it. And I am using a Wacom pen. That's why there is some pressure sensitivity being applied. But there we go. So again, whatever is white is going to remain on the surface. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and save this out as another version of the sticker with some weathering. So I'm going to save this as a JPEG, and I'll just call this Alpha 3. Click on Save. Quality 9, that's fine. Let's go back to Cinema 4D. So remember, I'm working with the second Jake over here. Let's go to my opacity, and let's load in the Jake Alpha 3. And there we go. So now this one has suffered from some weathering. You can see quite a lot of the sticker is no longer visible. And if I load in that other version, the Alpha 2, a little bit more of the sticker is visible. So this is a really, really awesome way to create some variation and some realism that these stickers have been on the surface for quite some time, and it's actually suffered from some weathering. Alright, so what else is also cool about this method? If I go ahead and I create a plane, okay, I'm just going to scale the plane a little bit. Let's go ahead and drag and drop our perfect Jake onto the surface. So there we go, we've got Jake, and the transparency has also been applied onto this plane. So this is a cool way of adding some dimension. Okay, you want to make sure, you'll notice that whenever a plane is intersecting with some geometry, you might see some intersection issues. So this definitely requires a bit of finessing and rotating it until, you know, everything lines up almost perfectly, but you don't want it to be completely flush against the surface. But it is going to add some dimension, like the sticker has some height applied to it. So that's a really cool way of doing that, just by using a plane. Okay, so that doesn't stop there. We can add a little bit more realism to the sticker as well, especially if you're working with a plane sticker. Just go ahead, select the plane, press C to make it editable. So we're going to be seeing all of these faces. Now I need to try and identify where Jake is actually placed on our plane over here. So this is Jake right over there. I know that just by referencing it. Go to your live selection, and let's select just a couple of polygons over here. So I'm going to select just a couple of polygons over there, so close to his arm. And then I'm going to go to rotate, and just rotate this a little bit. Okay, and press move. And now look at that. That is really cool. That looks like the sticker is peeling and just hanging off the wall. So pretty cool way of adding some more believability and, you know, overall dimension and realism to these stickers. So they don't have to be completely flat on a surface like that as well. If you use a plane, you can also add some more dimension to the sticker. So you can see over here there's some intersection. I can even, while I'm in live selection, I could select that top region, right, and just bring it out. Okay, and that'll get rid of that. Okay. Okay, I want to show you one more technique, and this is really cool. This is just a awesome way of applying some additional texturing onto your object. So think of it like almost being in Substance Painter, but without having that much control. But you can still bring in and overlay maybe some additional weathering or rust or smudges on top of these labels or these stickers, just to add a little bit more realism. So I'm actually going to go back to Photoshop, right? And remember our base material. Let's drag and drop that into Photoshop. Now I'm going to go to images, go to levels, right? And I just want to bring out some of these values. I'm also going to go to adjustments, desaturate this to make it completely black and white. Now I'm going to go back to my levels again. Okay, and just bump that up just so there's some really harsh variation in the values over here. You can see it's almost creating this vignette effect, which is pretty cool. Now go ahead and save this. All right, just save that as, just say alpha. I'm going to make sure that's on 9. Let's go back to Cinema 4D. I'll just take this Jake material, Control C, Control V, double click on that, and here by the opacity, let's bring in the alpha, and by the diffuse, let's bring in our base material. Okay, now just go ahead and drag and drop this. Okay, actually select the cube. We just want it on the front face, so drag and drop it onto the front face. Now, look at that. You can notice that it's adding this material on top of the sticker, and this is also another way of adding some weathering, but I can offset this. Right, offset the weathering. Let me just try and see exactly where it is. Okay, there we go. Now I can see it a lot clearer. But now this is another way of adding some weathering on top of these labels while paying attention to the layer order. And that's using the exact same material, the base material, and it's just giving us some freedom to move this around. But what's cool about this as well, if I double click on here, go to diffuse, let's maybe make this black and bring this down. You can see I can start adding some additional color and texturing on that. So if I go to the node editor, go to transform, maybe increase the size here a bit. There we go. Look at that. That adds some really, really awesome additional texturing on top of these labels. Now again, if I take Jake over here and put him on top of this material, he's on top of the weathering, and the other Jake is underneath. So this is a fantastic way of even texturing an object using labels directly in Cinema 4D with Octane Render. So this is how I add a lot of variation to my materials without having to open up Substance Painter. So you could even go to the bump over here, go to image texture, and load in this exact same image on the bump. I want to go to my node editor and make sure my transform is connected to the transform on the bump. And now, okay, let me zoom in a bit so you can see what's happening over here. It's adding some more dimension. Right, the bump is adding a little bit more realism onto this material. And of course, just make sure it's selected over here and adjust the offset. So great way of adding some additional texturing on top of labels and everything else. So if your diffuse maybe had colors from rust or wood, well, guess what? As long as you use it in conjunction with the opacity and pay attention to your layer order, you can actually texture a 3D object directly in Cinema 4D with Octane Render. Okay, so you can see how the texturing can get really advanced and really complex just by using this label system. So if I go ahead and duplicate this material, go to opacity, let's bring in where is it? Under our resources, there's a smudge wipe. Now this is a 4K material that I created by hand, and I created these tileable roughness maps. But now I'm actually showing you how I'm using my roughness maps as a label. So I actually created 50 of these. It is on my Gumroad if you guys want to get your hands on all of them. But I did include one just so you can give it a try and see if you like the overall quality. So I'm going to drag and drop this onto my opacity over here. I'm going to put it on my bump as well. And this is just a fantastic way of adding some additional texture in and detail onto your objects or onto your surfaces. Okay, so let's make sure this is rendering. Let's drag and drop this onto the surface over here. Okay, and just pay attention to the layer order. Let's go to the opacity over here, maybe dial down some of the gamma so those smudges are visible. So you can see that on the surface over here. And this is adding some more detail and some more texturing onto the surface. And then I can go to my diffuse. Alright, I can bring this all the way up as well. We'll see more of those smudges and wipes, or we can change the color because it's a black and white image. And now because this is plugged into the bump, this is what I was talking about. The bump adds some more dimension and texture onto the surface. So yeah, I think this is a really cool way of texturing surfaces as well. And just playing around with the layer order. So maybe Jake is not affected by that. He's on top of all of the texturing. Okay, so here is the stop sign image from the thumbnail. Now we're not going to be creating this exact same image because I feel like the most important part of this tutorial is understanding the overall techniques and how to achieve these effects. So at this point of the tutorial, you can actually look at this image and break it down and get an understanding of how I've actually put this together. We know there's a piece of geometry here. We know that a certain face has been selected. We created a material with some stickers on it. You can see I've painted on some weathering. I've paid a very close attention to the layer order here as well to determine what gets affected by certain weathering effects as well. So at this point of the tutorial, you can break down this image, and I feel like that is where the value lies. It's understanding how to achieve these effects. So I'm going to give you some homework. There is a stop sign that's included in the resources. Go ahead, load that into Cinema 4D and try and texture it as close as possible to what you see in my image. But you guys can obviously have fun, add your own labels on there as well. But now that you understand the overall techniques, texturing an object like this shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, so that's going to be the end of the tutorial, and that is exactly how I added these labels in my 90s kid image that you see over here. So now you know exactly how I have achieved this because I've showed you how to do that from start to finish. So I hope you've learned some really awesome techniques. You can see just how powerful the label system is in Cinema 4D with Octane Render. You don't even really need to use Substance Painter. You can do this directly in Cinema 4D, which I think is really awesome. So this is going to help you add some more realism and just get better at texturing directly in Cinema 4D with Octane Render. Alright, so as always, I appreciate the support on this channel. Stay tuned for some more videos and tutorials, and goodbye.